So today's cardinal lesson, what we're talking about is IRA 401k and how Tom and Susan, who are our example here, where we're writing a whole financial plan for them, and it's in the show notes. Um, we're going through all 7 worries, focused today on the IRA 401k, and their financial plan that we wrote for Tom and Susan is in the show notes. So you can go in and read the whole thing. This is episode 5 of 8. And what we're talking about today is specifically for Tom and Susan, what decisions we've made around their 401k IRA. So I want to push it to Tom. And I want Tom, why are we doing this video today?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing this video because Tom and Susan, and this is pretty typical for most people that walk through the door, most of their savings is in an IRA and a 401k. This is money that has not been taxed yet. It's been tax deferred. They've saved the taxes up to this point, but now they're facing retirement and they have to come up with a plan of how to pull it out and how to pay taxes. And ultimately, we need to do this in a way that lets them keep more of their money, right? The less in taxes they pay, the more they get to keep. So it's important to have a strategy around this. And that's going to include things like Roth conversion, QCDs. We'll get into all this stuff during the show, but you need to have a plan around your IRA, because if you don't, you're going to be on the government's plan. And I'll just tell you, that's going to be in their favor, not necessarily in yours. And so let me bring up the show notes. You can find these at the below the link on our video. They're also at our website at cardinalguide.com. We have the board, and then like Hans mentioned, we have a couple sort of tax planning charts. We'll refer back to these, and then we have the plan that we've written. We have a series. This is the 5th video of 8. We're really talking about the IRA, but you can see the plan here, sort of all the different pieces. We have a section that talks about, RMDs, QCDs, Roth conversions. There's a section of the plan that goes over all of this. I'm going to turn it back to Hans. We're going to go through the board, and then we're actually going to get back in a little bit later into the software where we sort of do the modeling, where we sort of fine tune what level of Roth conversions that we recommended for Tom and Susan. And then ultimately, if we do a plan for you, that's how we would come to the recommendation for you.
Yeah, we want to make each one of these videos that we do stand by itself. So in other words, you can watch this thing and you can learn things about what you need to do in your IRA 401k planning. And it's generally for people in their 50s or 60s. Because once you get to be 70 and beyond, you can still watch these videos and learn, but all of this stuff is live and well. You already know about it because you found out about it through the management of your IRA. So one of the questions that I'll ask is that why do we have a specific section of the financial plan that only deals with your IRA 401k money? And why don't we just take that and just mix it into the investment and income worry? Because we're going to take the IRA money and we're going to plug it into all of this after we're done here. So this video today is answering that question. So why do we do? There's 3 things at every financial plan that we look at relative to your money and relative to you, and that's RMDs, required minimum distributions. And I would ask you, what is your distribution plan for your IRA or 401k? And then, I'm supposed to shut up at this point and let you answer. And you might want to write that one down. What is my distribution plan? Do I have one? And the good news is, if you don't have one, the government one has one already made for you. And it's starting at 73 or 75. Tom wanted to speak to that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the questions that we often get is, what is my RMD age? A lot of people know that it exists, right? They know there's some date that they have to take it. It used to be 70 and a half, and then they change it to 72, and then they change it to 73, and now maybe 75. So it's all over the place. And it's important for you to know what your age is. And so let me just sort of simplify this as best I can. If you were born prior to 1960, so 1959 or earlier, have a date of birth, your RMD age now is 73. If you were born after or 1960 and after, your RMD age is 75. I will just make a side note here. This is ignoring people who've been on RMDs for a while. Your RMD age. If you'd already started before they made these rules, you don't get to recalculate it. But if you haven't started yet, prior to 1960, 73, 1960 and after, 75. Keep that in mind because it's important to know when you start doing some of this other planning.
Okay, so we're going to look at Tom and Susan. Tom Tom was born in 1958, so he's 73 in 2031. His first RMD is due 4/1/2032, and his second RMD is due by 12/31/2032, and Susan is just a year later. So why are you talking about that? 2032 is a ways away. Well, we want to know when this is, and we're doing a financial plan that's going to cover 30 years or longer for Tom and Susan, or just one of them that's a survivor. And so we need an RMD plan. We need to make sure that whatever we create satisfies RMDs in an intelligent way. And so the point I want to make out of this is a lot of people just read the rules themselves. They put off doing anything till 2031 if they're Tom, or 2032. And they actually read in the rules, well, I got all the way till April 1st, the year after I turned 73, to do my first RMD, and you do. So you could do it in February or March of 2032. But the problem comes in is you'll have 2 RMDs that year, because that's only the first year you can wait till April. All the years subsequent to the year you turn 73, you're going to have to take it during the year. So watch out for that mistake, where all of a sudden you're going to have 2 RMDs during one tax year, and it's going to make the problem worse. So Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think they really put that very first one in April to give you a little bit of a grace period, right? It's your first year. Maybe you don't know how it works and you sort of missed it. And they so give you some time to fix it. If you are planning ahead like we're doing, very rarely would we recommend wait till April because, like Hans mentioned, that means you have 2 in that same year. And so, in reality, what we typically recommend is you take the RMD in the year you turn 73, or for older people or for younger people when they turn 75. But again, I think taking it in the year you turn that age helps prevent 2 in a single year. But it's absolutely true is you can wait until April 1st of the following year just on the very first RMD, not any subsequent ones, but the very first one. They give you a little bit of a grace period. But if you're watching this video and we're planning for you, probably we're not going to wait till then. We want to take the first one in the year you turn whatever age, 73 or 75.
So Tom, you had something to say when we were preparing about, well, first of all, Tom and Susan, like, how big of a deal was it that we looked at RMDs for them? And then you said that there's some people who really don't need to worry about RMDs because they need the income from their IRA, and that in and of itself. So could you make that comment?
Sure. So when we have people come in and they're all gung ho about tax planning, want to do Roth conversions, do all these QCDs and stuff, I say, well, let's take a step back first and look at what income needs you have. Because I think the first place you want to start in this retirement plan is making sure your income is taken care of. And if most of your money is in IRAs and you need to live off some of that, which is a lot of people, then you might not have an issue from an RMD standpoint, right? The income you're pulling out already could be enough to satisfy that RMD requirement. And so we need to know it. We need to make sure we're taking enough. So I don't want you to ignore it, but we might not need to take any extra steps. I get a question a lot of times is people are living off their IRA. They know this RMD age is coming up and they're worried they have to take more above and beyond what they're already taking. And it depends on the balances. It depends on how much they're taking out. But that might not be true. That might be that their income alone is enough to satisfy that. And we don't have much of an issue to worry about. So in all of this tax planning, especially around the IRA and the 401k, step one is seeing, do you need to live off this money? And if so, how much? And then we go from there, right? Once we've solved the income need, and we'll have a future video where we talk more about that for Tom and Susan. But once we've solved the income need, then we look to see how much room left do we have to do some of this other planning, like Roth conversions, maybe taking advantage of QCDs. We'll get to that here in a little bit. But we want to start with the income need first, make sure that's covered, and then we'll do larger tax planning from there. Because I think a bad place to start is taxes. You end up doing all your planning around taxes, and you might wake up the next day and have no income to live off of. I think that would be a bad situation to end up in. So let's start with the income need, make sure that's we've solved for that. And then if there's future tax planning to do above and beyond that or within that, that's how I like to approach it. So I think again, just in your situation, make sure the income's taken care of. If we need to live off the IRA, let's do that first within reason, right? We need to make sure we're not living off too much. But then we do the rest of the tax planning from there.
Okay, I just want to stand back. I pulled this stuff right out of their plan. And so if you want to go into the show notes and go to the IRA 401k section, you're going to see this all planned out, all the things Tom is saying and I'm saying is going to be right in their plan. And it's my experience that people that don't do financial planning in their 60s, they don't look at any of this till they're 73 and it's right in front of them and they can't make any decisions. Now, next point I want to make is when we're going to talk about qualified charitable distributions, they don't start till 70 and a half. So why are we talking about them for Tom and Susan? They're 67 and 66, turning 1 year older. But they're still a couple of years away. And answering my own question, why are we talking about it now? Because it's part of the planning is when they get to 70 and a half, when Tom gets there, they're charitably inclined. We're going to start planning to give a little bit of their IRA away to charity every year because they told us to. And we're going to do that in a very tax efficient way. Now, the point I wanted to make, we're still on RMDs, is when you do a QCD, when you donate, you're older than 70 and a half, and you donate part of your IRA to charity, that counts toward your RMD. So it's actually pretty cool, and we bake that right into our financial plans. Now, when we talk about QCD, I just told you how Tom and Susan are doing. They're charitably inclined. They're already giving money every year to charity. And so what we're going to do at the very least is have them shift their current charitable giving to a QCD once they reach 70 and a half. And then possibly add to that because they have a desire to give more. And when they could see that they can do that through their IRA, it's very tax efficient to do a QCD that way. Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's helpful to maybe just define what this QCD is. Again, it stands for Qualified Charitable Distribution. It's when you give money directly out of your IRA to a qualified charity. A lot of people do it to their church. You could do it to nonprofits. Again, it needs to be a 501(c) charity. But again, it's a wonderful way to do your giving if you're already charitably inclined. If you don't have any intention to give to charity, this is not a reason to start giving because you are giving the money away, right? But anyone who is wanting to give some away, this is a wonderful way to do it right out of the IRA. Again, you have to be 70 and a half first, right? So that's one of the limitations. But once you hit that point, it's great, right? Because you have this IRA money that you put in there. When you put the money into those accounts, you got a tax deduction. So that's saved on taxes then. It's grown tax deferred. So you haven't had to pay tax on any of the growth and you get to give it away tax free. I mean, there's not very many things in the tax code that money never gets taxed. This is one of them. So any people who want to do giving certainly should look into this because it's a wonderful way to do it. And once you hit RMD age, you can then use that QCD to satisfy the RMD, assuming you don't need to live off the IRA, right? I mean, if you're living off the IRA and getting an income, you might already satisfy the RMD requirement. So this isn't going to, the QCD in that situation might not necessarily help from an RMD standpoint, but it's still a great way to do your giving, right? It's still a great way to do the charitable gifts. There's some nuances starting in 2026 now with Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill that he signed, where people who typically in the past you had to itemize deductions to take to get a benefit from the charitable gift. Most people were just taking the standard deduction, so they weren't getting any benefit. So this was great for those people. Starting in 2026, now you can take up to $2,000 if you're married of charitable deduction, even if you take the standard deduction. So I don't want to get too far in those weeds. There's some planning around there, but just know that there's some nuance there. And that's why a plan is helpful, is just to lay this out sort of piece by piece. But again, IRA money giving to charities, it's wonderful. One other small point, and then I'll turn it back to Hans, is to do a QCD, it needs to be in an IRA. A lot of times in our show, we're talking about IRA, 401k, and we're using those terms interchangeably. This is one that you cannot do that. 401ks you cannot do a QCD on a 401k. It has to be in an IRA to be able to take advantage of this.
Okay. So next up, Roth conversions. And this is where people start calling us as soon as we talk about Roth conversions, and people come in thinking maybe the whole plan is Roth conversions, and I guess it can be, but you come to us, first of all, you do a financial plan. We're going to go through all 7 of these things and apply them to you. That's what this whole video series is about. But now we're into the important stuff to our people coming in the door is Roth conversions. And so the question is, first of all, yes or no, am I going to do them or not? And in Tom and Susan's case, they definitely wanted to do them. They knew enough about it. So then it became, the second question is, once the answer is yes, the second question is, how much and how often? And it really pays with Roth conversions to delay them over as long as we can, just because we're going to smooth out the taxes. But the flip side of that is we want to get them done in the 60s and early 70s because Roth conversions have the effect of reducing your RMD. I mean, in other words, if you do some Roth conversions, it's like in Tom and Susan, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 7, when they get to 73, they're going to have a smaller RMD than they otherwise would have. And then once they have that RMD, they have to take it. You can't convert an RMD. And that's a place that a lot of people. So this whole video is not necessarily a school in Roth conversions, but it is a little bit. And we're taking you through Tom and Susan and what they did. And what we chose for them is the beginning of IRMAA. So I just laid out with a typical client, we're going to start typically at the top of the 24% married tax bracket. If it's a couple, which is 403,000. So that's their income's 403,000. Excuse me. Their income is probably 180,000 or 200,000 or 150,000. And that means that there's a gap of about $250,000 that would be eligible to do a Roth conversion and pay the taxes. And the most taxes that we would pay is 24%. And that's pretty attractive to a lot of people. So with Tom and Susan, we went lower than that, and we used 218,000 as the cap, where that's the IRMAA threshold, the Medicare. How much are my Medicare Part B premiums going to be affected by these Roth conversions? And I'm telling you, this person that's using the 24, it's probably high. So anyhow, I want to push you to Tom, and Tom's going to go into the software that we use to create Tom and Susan's plan and kind of show you what I've just been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a common thing that people, they watch our video, they're following our channel, they reach out to do a plan. Roth conversions almost inevitably comes up, right? This is one of the areas that I think we talk a lot about, we give a lot of advice on, and it drives a lot of people in, honestly. I mean, that's where they're really coming to us for. And so what we like to do is, again, we're building the whole plan. We like to look at everything, right? Because all of these things are connected with each other, which hopefully you've seen throughout these series of videos. And so we can't just look at Roth conversions in a vacuum, right? We need to look at it as part of the larger picture. But certainly, it's a great way to do some tax planning. I want to take us through sort of our thought process of how we arrived at the amount we've recommended for Tom and Susan. And I will just let you know, when we're doing a plan for you, this is a collaborative approach, right? It's not just like take it or leave it. Is we have lots of discussions back and forth. We show you different options. Really, what the goal is to get us to the same page of what we think is the best recommendation. Real quickly, I'm just going to walk you back through kind of where they started. This is where they are currently, right? They got about 230,000 in the bank. They've been good savers. Susan has like just under 100,000 in her IRA. Tom has, about 1.6, 1.7 in his traditional IRA. They do have some Roth money that they've built up over time, and then some non-qualified money that's already been taxed in a brokerage account. So really what we're talking about here is this 1.6, 1.7, and her about 100,000 of IRA money, money that hasn't been taxed. What do we do there? And so I'm not going to go through the whole software. We have the very first video that we did on with Tom and Susan. We went through like the whole software and look at this, but I want us to go through and look at this tax section because this is where we really can get into the idea of the Roth conversions. And so I got to explain a little bit what we're looking at, and then I'll show you kind of how we approach this. So this blue shaded area, this is if they do no Roth conversions. They just stick to the government's plan, taking RMDs, taking money out that they need to live on, and then we just go on into the future. So you'll notice these different lines are the various tax brackets. So this orange line is the top of the 24%. The yellow line is the top of the 22%. This green line, which is kind of below this blue area, is the top of the 12%. And then this light blue line down below here is the 10%. They're clearly way above the 10%, filling up the 12%. So their income, when we look at sort of the RMDs and stuff, what that's projected to do is their income is going to be right into that 22% tax bracket. So at a base starting point, they're kind of at the bottom of the 22% tax bracket. And so now what we can do is say, okay, that's where we're starting. Now, what does this look like if we start doing Roth conversions? Let me show you sort of what we ended up from a recommendation standpoint is I can dial in different conversion targets, right? So I can do Medicare brackets, I can do tax brackets, I can do capital gains brackets. Through the conversations we have with them, we sort of arrived at the point that they don't like paying IRMAA. They've been paying because if you remember, Tom and Susan, they work for a small practice. He's an MD, and they had to sign up for Medicare when they turned 65 because they didn't have a credible coverage. And so they've been on Medicare. They've had a high income, paying a lot of IRMAA, and it really just gets under their skin. They don't like it. If they can avoid it, they would like to. So it's okay. Well, let's see what that looks like. And so I told the software, say, okay, I want you to convert up to the point where we're not having to pay any IRMAA. I will acknowledge that this is an estimate. All software projections, future looking are estimates. And so in reality, year by year, we'll sit down and help calculate this for them. But what the software does is, okay, we're going to convert up to that point. In 2026, the number is 218,000. Just as a reminder, that looks at your income from 2 years ago. We filed an appeal with Tom and Susan because their income 2 years ago were much higher. It's going to be lower. So again, we have a video that we talked about that already. But again, so we dial that up to no-IRMAA, assuming that their kids, this estimated terminal tax rate, or how to read this is assuming their kids pay 30% tax on traditional IRA money left. If there's money left in a traditional IRA when the kids inherit it and they have to pay 30% tax on that, that's that estimated terminal tax. So assuming that tax rate, how much better off are they, again, projected to be by doing the Roth conversions? And this is sort of the ending balance for the kids. It's over $500,000 to the positive, right? They're better off to the tune of $521,000. Side note on that is I don't pay a lot of attention to this exact number because there's so many assumptions that goes into this number. But when I'm comparing one strategy versus another, directionally is one strategy larger than the next one? That I think is helpful information. But again, based off the projections, over $500,000 to the positive, which they love. They said, this is great. We're getting money out. We're doing it over a slow period of time. You can see this green area is it's converting to about early 80s, and then you'll see the income drop off. That's dropping off because we're done with Roth conversions, which really just tells me that the balance has been converted. And now our income stays low underneath the 12% tax bracket. If I get rid of the blue area, you'll see that. So we're kind of right underneath the 12% bracket for the rest of the time, which is great. Some of the things that helps do, one, it gets money out in a controlled manner. We avoid IRMAA. We're building up the Roth account, which is great money to leave to the kids. Tom and Susan can access it tax-free. The other thing it really is helpful in is avoiding this widow's tax. And so, you'll see as we have other videos, we talk about this, but the widow's tax is when the first spouse passes away, immediately, or I guess the next year, that surviving spouse is paying taxes at the single tax filing rate, which is much higher, right? It's double, right? You get there twice as fast. And so the RMDs haven't changed. The IRA balance hasn't changed when the first spouse passes away. And the percentages in Tom and Susan's case are 1 year apart. So the RMD percentages are about the same. And so that income really doesn't change that much, but the tax brackets shrink. And so again, one benefit of the Roth conversions is while they're both still alive is getting money out, avoiding that single tax filing rate at some point in the future and doing that systematically. So that was where we ended up. But let me show you another consideration we had with them, because some people come in and they're really worried about future tax rates. They're convinced that tax rates will be higher in the future. Hans and I agree that at some point they will be higher. Now, when will that be? I mean, who knows? I mean, we don't have that crystal ball, and we're not in Washington. But just looking at where we are from a debt standpoint, they're going to have to raise revenues at some point, which would be raising taxes. And so some people say, I want to get this out much more quickly. And that's when we have on the board and say, okay, well, what if we went to the 24%? So this ordinary income tax bracket, then I can dial that into the 24% rate, hit refresh, and you'll notice it's a much faster conversion, right? So it only takes 3 or 4 years, and then we're done, and then it drops off significantly at that point. And so it's a much faster conversion. This number is actually a little bit higher, right? They're pretty close, but it's a little bit higher than what the IRMAA level was. But you are paying a lot more taxes to get there, and you're going to be paying IRMAA and different things. And so when we went over both scenarios with Tom and Susan, they liked the little bit slower approach. The other thing that allows them to do is it leaves money in the IRA for longer, allowing them to take advantage of the QCDs once they get to 70 and a half. It also, keeps them in the 22% tax bracket as opposed to the 24%, which they like that. And the big sort of deciding point is they just really did not like paying that IRMAA. In their plan, it worked that we could manage this staying below the IRMAA level. That is not always the situation. Sometimes people come in, say your IRA balance is double theirs or something like that, or your other income is higher. We might have to go above IRMAA, right? So I'm not saying all our plans stick to that IRMAA level, but it's something we look at, right? It's saying, okay, if you don't like it, can we manage that? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no. It's very dependent upon your situation. But again, that's something that we take into consideration. That's why doing the larger plan, I think, is effective, because we can take in different approaches, different considerations from all these aspects here. So, Hans, I don't know if you want me to go anything else with the software here.
Well, I think this is good, Tom. Thank you. Yeah. So this is the Roth conversion section, and the other point I want to make is once we arrive at a strategy, that isn't baked for the next 30 years. Like Tom and Susan decided to just go right under IRMAA. The only thing that's really baked is their 2026 conversion rate, possibly their 2027 conversion rate. And then after that, we're going to be sitting down every year, refiguring this stuff, looking at what's happened, looking at the horizon. So these numbers throughout retirement, you're going to be recalculating them every year. We're just trying to use this software to see, does it make sense to do it or not? And then if we're going to do it, how much and how often, and where does that get us? And then what's the end result? Because the real payoff for this are the kids that inherit the IRA, is they're not going to have to pay taxes on it at high tax rates. So those are the three things we look at in IRA Roth. And we talked about income. And so I just want to jump now into some considerations, some of which we've mentioned already. The widow tax. And the widow tax just means that when two become one, the survivor is going to pay tax at single tax rates. And that really affects Roth conversions, and it affects RMDs. Just trust me on that. Tax rates in the future, Tom already mentioned that. We're going to want to hear what your opinion is. Do you think tax rates are going to be higher in the future? If they are, that's going to lean more toward Roth conversions. What's your state income tax situation, especially where you live now? Are you going to move and maybe move to a state without taxes? That can affect whether you do Roth conversions now or you wait. And if you do them now and you're not moving and you have a high state income tax, we got to factor that all into the equation. Funds, do you have funds outside of the IRA to pay the income tax due on the conversion? And that's important because, say you're going to convert 200,000 for the year, and the extra tax calculated on that is 60,000. Okay. Are you going to take the 60,000 out of the 200,000, which will leave you 140,000 in the Roth? Or are you going to convert the whole 200,000 and pull the 60 grand for taxes out of some other account that you've already paid taxes? That makes a huge difference in all of that. And we need to know that, and we can plan that out. When will a Roth be needed? So that factor is that generally, once we convert money, you have money, we're going to save that for the widower for income, and possibly save that. It's going to be the last money we spend because that's the money we want to pass on to the kids if that's important to you. The Roth has no RMDs, so that's part of the strategy of putting it there in the first place. So the government's not going to make you deal with the timing of your withdrawals. The IRMAA threshold, we talked about that in their plan. We talked about Congress as, you think Congress is going to tax our Roth IRAs. I certainly hope they don't, but we want to ask you what you think about that. And it would be a seriously going back on their word, but they could do that. They could just figure out some way to say, we're going to tax this money again. We want you thinking about that possibility when you're making a decision about this. Charitable intent with QCDs, I mean, it just matters. Do you have charitable intent? Because if you don't have charitable intent, it's hard to justify a QCD just over the taxes. We just mentioned deathbed Roth conversions. This is a terrible place that Tom and I get put in, but when a couple is our clients and one of our clients dies and we're dealing with the widow and we're usually helping them with a bunch of stuff, but this is the last year of a joint tax return. And so it's the last chance we have at doing a Roth conversion where we could go up to this $403,000 level of income tax. And that's kind of a difficult conversation to have with a fresh widow. And we don't always engage in that, but just want to make out a point. There are many times a deathbed Roth conversion. Another place, well, that's not a deathbed Roth conversion, that's after death. But we have people with large estates, and they're calling us up, or their kids are calling us up, and they're going to pass away, but they still haven't yet, and they are of sound mind or the power of attorney. We can do a big Roth conversion before they die because the beneficiary can't convert that to a Roth. So anyhow, I don't want to get too far off in that. And the last joint tax return for a widow, I already covered that. So I want to bring Tom back on. I'm Hans Scheil.
And I'm Tom Griffith.
And we thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.